Hey, good afternoon, Trinity friends. This is Pastor Sue, and welcome to this week's episode of Patio Ponderings. Today, I've chosen my patio inside the fenced-in enclosure outside of Trondheim Church. It's where we have our playground. But I chose this location because I wanted to help us think about this story that we heard on Sunday, in which Paul and his ministry companion Silas are in prison. Now, what we mostly focus on when we hear this story is the amazing thing that happens when they're actually in the prison. They have been put in prison because they caused an uproar in the community, casting out the demon of a slave girl. The slave girl, through the use of that demon, was able to tell the future. And so her owners were making money on her. And now that the demon is cast out, they no longer can. And they're upset. But while they're in prison, singing songs, singing hymns, despite their predicament, there's this incredible earthquake, and all the doors to the jail cells are flung open. Paul and Silas befriend the jailer, and his family is baptized into Christ. But what I have been thinking about is the bracketing pieces of this story center. The piece where Paul and Silas are actually put into prison, and then the piece at the end where they get to leave the prison. So let's just look at a couple of these verses, or a piece of these verses. So these owners of the slave girl approached the legal authorities, and they said, "These people are causing an uproar in the city. They are Jews who promote customs that we Romans can't accept or practice." Now the crowd joins in this, and the authorities order Paul and Silas to be stripped of their clothes and beaten with a rod. And once they're severely beaten, then they are put into prison, and they are shackled, put in stocks, and attached to the walls of the prison. This is a really brutal scene that we just kind of skim over in this story, this terrible beating. But there's something that happens when this is set up, is that the reason they are accused and punished is because they are Jews. And right away, we see this setup of Jews versus the Romans, okay? But here's what happens at the end of the story. After this whole other miraculous thing has happened in prison, then we hear this, that the police were alarmed. These legal authorities were alarmed because they found out that Paul and Silas were Roman citizens. See, Paul holds a really unique identity. He is both Jewish, but he also has an actual Roman citizenship, and that gives him privilege. And so now they came and consoled Paul and Silas, escorted him out of the prison, and begged them to leave the city. How interesting that they are condemned to prison and beaten in the beginning, and then at the end, for the same crime or lack of a crime, they are consoled. And the only thing that changes, in the beginning they're viewed as Jews, in the end they're viewed as Roman citizens. But here's what I've been thinking about, is why, when they were first brought forth before the authorities, when they were sentenced to be stripped and beaten and then thrown into jail, why didn't Paul and Silas say something then about being Roman citizens? Why did that fact come out only after this other miraculous thing happened? I find that really interesting. When I put myself in their place in that story, I would think I'd want to do anything in my power to avoid this horrible thing that's happening to them. But they don't. And I don't know, were they not allowed to speak? If they're seen as the Jewish people, when we know they are oppressed, did they actually not have a chance where they could speak, where they could say something? I think that's entirely possible. Did they somehow sense there was a purpose in this? and so they just chose not to. That's possible too. And frankly, I don't have any answers. I don't know why. I just wonder about it. Either way, what this story does though is creates a picture of a system, a jail system, in which different people get different treatment within that system based on what their identity is, whether they're Jew or whether they are Roman citizens. And so I also wonder if this can't be a reflection for us back into our own world. Are there systems in our world, in our country, in our communities, in which the same system operates differently because of one identity versus another? So much to think about in this story, all the way through it, the outsides and the center. So I hope this has piqued some curiosity for you. As always, I'd love to know what you have to say. Have a wonderful day, and we'll see you Sunday. Bye.